Mithran. In today's chess video, we are going to solve some chess puzzles that are related with attacking the weak king. It is black's move to play. White had delivered a check with queen to b5, black defended with pawn to c6, and now white goes for the blunder queen to a4. Pause the video for a few minutes and try to come up with the best way to punish this queen to a4 move. Well, it might seem like a good way to play the move pawn to a6 and prepare queenside castling next. But it allows a lot of time for white. He can freely develop this bishop to e3 and white is somewhat doing some defense. But after queen to a4, the move that you had to see is pawn to f5. And the idea is if white goes for e captures f5, then black will go for knight takes g3, he would give a check, f takes g3, bishop to d5, he would give another check, king to g1 and now queen to e2, threatening queen g2 checkmate. So rook to f2 defending it, but now queen to e1, rook to f1, queen captures g3 simply runs into another forced checkmate sequence. So after this pawn to f5 move, white plays bishop to g5, but now you have to see this continuation. Black immediately goes for rook captures g5. He was not hesitating to sacrifice his rook. H captures g5, and this is the idea, my friends. Black gets a lot of counterplay for the price of one rook. He can simply go for f captures g3 and he will simply slowly attack this white king. Queen to d1, white retreated the queen and he's somewhat doing some defense, but now this simply does not work. Do you see why? You might all be thinking f captures g3 is the way to go. But then white has f4 ideas and after g captures f3, queen captures f3, it is now white who's better in this position because of his material advantage. So after queen to d1, you should bring all your pieces into the game. This is one of the golden chess principles. Black went for rook to d8 and the idea is the queen can go to c2, e2 and c1. White went for c1. But let's see what happens if white goes to c2. Then black would get queen captures g5, threatening f captures g3, and let's say white goes for g captures f4. Black would go for knight captures f4, knight to d2, queen h4 check, king to g1, and after queen to h3 there is simply no stopping queen g2 checkmate. So in this position, after rook to d8, white went for queen to c1. He is now ready to play g captures f4, but now black's always one step ahead of white. He goes for f captures g3 and the idea is if you go for h captures g3, then after knight captures g3, you give a check, king to g1, knight captures f1 will slowly win the rook, and as black has equal material and is truly up a pawn, this will be a winning position for black. So after f captures g3, white tried knight to a3, but now this rook was not doing anything on d8. It simply attacked this queen, but that's all. So black wins rook to d3 and now there is simply no defense for white. He could have simply resigned the game, but he chose to play rook to d1 and now, do you see the continuation, my friends? After rook to d1, this move was certainly a blunder. White should immediately go for king to g1 and he will at least try to hold the position. But after rook to d1, pause the video for a few minutes and try to come up with the best way to punish this rook to d1 blunder. Well, after rook to d1, black simply goes for bishop to d5 and now this rook is hanging and this bishop is hanging. But the idea is none of these pieces can be captured. If white goes for rook captures d3, queen captures c4, he would give a check, king to g1 and queen to h1 is a beautiful checkmate. So if you go for e captures e5, then do you see the idea once again? Well, black will go for queen e4 check, king to g1, g captures f2, king captures f2 and now rook to g3. Rook to e1, rook g2 check, king to f1 and knight to g3 is indeed a beautiful checkmate. So let's come back. After bishop to d5, the only possible continuation for white is to play pawn to f3, but this is certainly ugly for white. G captures f3 was played in the game and it seemingly offers this rook. White did not accept the rook because if you go for rook captures d3, then after queen takes c4, black is threatening f2 check and there is nothing white can do to stop this. Let's say white goes for king to g1, f2 check, king to f1, queen to g2 check, king to e2 and f1 queens. king to e3, and then black would simply go for queen to f2 check, which would be a checkmate. But after queen captures c4, doesn't it seem like a good idea for white to play rook to e3? Well, in this case, if white plays rook to e3, black has a forced checkmate sequence in two moves. Do you see how? Black will go for f2, he would give a check and it seemingly offers the rook, but in exchange for the queen, we get the king. Black would go for bishop captures f4, and this is indeed the truly magical finish. So after this g captures f3 move, white went for e captures d5, but now this simply ends the game in one move. Black went for queen to e2, and yes, it was in this position that white resigned the game. Why did he resign the game? Well, now black is threatening queen g2 checkmate, and there is simply nothing for white to stop it. If white goes for rook to e1, then black would go for g2, he would give a check, king to g1, f2 check, king captures g2, and f1 queens would be a checkmate, as this queen is checking the king. So let's say white goes for king to h2, then once again black would promote this queen, king takes g1, and after f2 check, king to h1, black would go for f captures e1, he would open a queen, and this is indeed a checkmate. Thank you for watching the video till the end, friends. I will be visiting you with more chess videos on opening chess traps, puzzles, endgame strategies very soon. So subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss any of my future content. Thank you and have a great day, friends.